in my opinion, Snapchat is the largest open-air drug market that we have when it comes to our teens. And I say in my opinion because I'm sure Snapchat would like to find a reason to sue me right now. But I think if
disclaimer, whatever
right?
we need to say.
So if somebody, I really believe though, if somebody sat down and really researched it, you would find that there's a pretty serious link here.
The stories keep coming up.
Right. Every teen death that family who's lost a teen this way, it's Snapchat.
I hear the
comes
same
up.
thing too, yeah.
Welcome again, guys, to another episode of the Bridging Divides podcast. I am Mitch Bates, and my co-host, Lindsay Taylor, here.
Hello, guys.
So we're super excited, and we have our guest, Amy Neville. She works with, or you are the founder and president, the whole bag for the Alexander Neville Foundation. Just does absolutely amazing work. I'm currently going to her Parent Connection Academy. I guess this has got 5 weeks.
Yeah, 5 weeks. We're almost halfway through.
Yeah.
It's put on through our community coalition called the Southeast Valley Community Alliance in partnership with the town of Queen Creek.
Yeah, and it's just absolutely amazing. So what we're going to talk about today are the main things that our teens are facing, what we can do as parents, and you both have just an amazing story, which the similarities are like eerily similar. But I'm very excited to talk about their stories and why they do what they do. You'll notice that Lindsay is here with me again today, so you'll be seeing a lot more of her as the Hope Institute and I are moving forward together a lot. So if you're a teen and you're watching this, then let us know if we're totally off base as the parents that are talking about all these things. And just let us know in the comments, and then we'll address all your questions. So, Amy, with that, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Any chance to talk about these issues, I think, is an important opportunity.
100%.
Agreed.
Oh, that's the whole point that we're here. So, tell us about the
Sure. So
the Alexander Neville Foundation.
Sure. So it's Alex lived for 14 years, so I feel like I could talk about him for at least that amount of time. But since we don't have 14 years, here it is in a nutshell.
And he's your son.
My son, yep. Alex is my son. We lost him June of 2020 to a fake Oxycontin that he purchased off of Snapchat. Long story short, Alex was having this weird, funky few days in June of 2020, and at that point, I asked him, like, what's going on, dude? Are you using something? We were very open about these things, and Alex told us a lot of things throughout his short little life that many times I was like, I can't believe he just told me that. I had to learn how to listen to him, like, am I listening to solve problems, or am I listening because you're venting and you just need to get this out? And so we felt like we were pretty good. We communicated with our team pretty well. We thought we had all the guardrails in place. We were having the conversations. Internet went off at our house at 9 o'clock at night every night, but of course, like every third day, we'd have to change the password because, of course, he's brilliant and would outsmart us every now and then and figure it out. But so this day came, in June of 2020, and so I asked him, like, what's going on, dude? Are you using something? I want to take you to the doctor. And he's like, no, Mom, I was up late, I ate something bad. And of course, 14, height of puberty, intense mood swings for Alexander was on par with his personality. And so I let it go. But he came back to me and he said, okay, I got to tell you guys something. And 3 key things came out of that conversation that night. He's like, I wanted to experiment with Oxy. I got it from a dealer on Snapchat. It has a hold on me and I don't know why. And of course, we did exactly what you'd think we would do, right? We called the treatment place the following morning. We went about our business that day, waiting for them to call us back with their recommendation. That night he died. Like, everything happened really fast. They literally called me back 4 minutes after his time of death. Help couldn't have come fast enough. But we didn't know about fentanyl. We didn't know about the depths of social media harms. There was so much missing information that wasn't being talked about that we instantly set out to figure out those pieces. And from there we met with all of these amazing experts, law enforcement experts, medical experts, U.S. attorneys who've dealt with these issues. Like, you name it, we talked to that category. And so then I went to create our presentations and the education we were going to put out there. And I'm like, something's still not right. And it was that youth perspective. So starting in November of 2020, we started meeting with teens. And that has evolved into quarterly meetings with teens where they just tell me what's going on. It's very casual. And we talk about the issues. That they are, they've got this street level view of what's happening. And they're much more in tune with these things, whether we like to admit it or not. And that has been so informative in the work that we do. Like, I don't create a presentation, I don't put out new content or materials until I get their approval first, because I want it to resonate with them. I want it to really mean something. And I think we're accomplishing that so far, so good.
No, I
Love that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just, I think often when we have these discussions about mental health, substance use, we leave the youth out of it. And it's the adults in the room kind of having the conversations like we are today, making decisions.
Well, hey, we'll have to get
we got to get youth on here. If you want to go, please. Yes.
I can bring you youth. We actually have a youth coalition. We have our peer-to-peer prevention program through the Alexander Neville Foundation, and then we also have our youth coalition that's part of our community coalition here in Arizona.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'd love to get you guys on. So, but yeah, so I think that they often get left out of these conversations, and they are the ones that are living in today's world. It's far different than how we grew up, right? And so I think they're vital, actually. And so I love that is like really the center of what you're doing. They're vital to this conversation.
And they're amazing. They blow me away all the time, And it is, we're I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm old enough to have not had this technology. Like, computers and typing class were barely a thing when I was in high school, right? So I'm trying to guide my kids through this experience where I have no lived experience. Like, my experience is probably closer to my grandmother's than my own 16-year-old daughter's right now.
Yeah, well, because with the introduction of this new technology of social media, it just has just taken off. My wife and I were just watching a show, and they like referenced some like really early, like MySpace or something. And it's like, what the heck is even MySpace even? But it's just with that introduction, like I don't know if it was you I was talking to, but it's like we have the perspective of what it was like without social media.
Yeah.
But our kids now, that's all they know.
Right.
Is a world with social media.
And then adults are like, oh, kids these days. I'm like, no, adults these days. We let this happen.
Yeah.
We fell for the bill of goods these companies were selling us hook, line, and sinker, and now we're in this mess, and we need to get them out of it, but we don't understand it, and they do. We need their help in getting us out of this mess.
No, I think that the key there, the key forward is communication. Like, you have to have those open lines of communication, whether it's between two partners or if it's between a parent and a child. What we're talking about here, like you have to have those the lines of communications going both ways.
And I would add to that another key is the education piece, right? Like you said, a lot of parents don't even know how to navigate these things because we didn't grow up with that, right? And so again, bringing the kids' voices in, learning from them, listening to them, right? And then coming together as a community of parents and helping educate parents on these things.
Absolutely. So, and I hear from parents who are like, well, my kid doesn't have social media, or just take the phone away. Like, those things are just so easy, right? In theory. But the reality is these companies have created these addictive products. Again, people really didn't see it coming in the early days. And so now to take the phone away from our kid can be very harmful. Like, there has to be a process to that. It's not that simple as taking it and locking it in a drawer these days, because now their brain is getting those dopamine hits, and they're going to have this compulsion, and that's what addiction feels like.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how to be prepared for those moments when we do take those things away or ground them or whatever the consequences might be.
Well, and let's be honest, I've worked with teens for the last 6 years or so, and you can take a phone away and they'll find a way around it if they really want it. They call them burner phones, right?
Right.
That's
the other thing too is these parents
like CIA.
Right, exactly.
You got a burner phone. It's crazy.
They're so smart.
They are. So we just have to guide that smarts and
or they borrow each other's phones and access their accounts through their friend's phone. Or the other one too, like, I don't have my kid doesn't have social media. But that doesn't mean your kid can't be harmed through it. A lot of these schools, middle schools and high schools, they put together these shit pages. Have you probably heard about them? Where they relationship people, or they talk poorly about people within these Instagram pages and things. And our kids end up on those things, whether or not they have social media. And so it's impacting them whether they're showing up in those spaces or not.
Yeah, no, Lindsay and I have talked about, it's like the genie's not going back in the bottle.
No,
social media is not going away. And for all the ugly side, there are upsides, right? To be able to connect with people
for sure,
in the world, and the ability to promote good. I mean, what we all do. I mean, this is all social media, right?
Right.
But that being said, like it's not going anywhere.
No.
And so we have to open our eyes to that and get our heads out of the sand if we want to be able to move forward instead of just complaining about kids these days.
Right, exactly.
You know,
let's take some action. Let's fix this at a higher level.
Yeah, which, you know, what we were talking about before is, you know, with our whole purpose for this podcast is not just shock and awe stories. I mean, what you have shared, which thank you, by the way, for opening up about that. That it's not an easy thing to open up and be vulnerable like that. There are those stories that we talk about, but we need to talk about the solution that comes with it. What have we learned through that? And that is a heavy lesson. Which you were sharing your story before, and I kind of interrupted you before we hit record. Did you please? Would you also share?
Yeah, so, you know, I love that you started out with Alex lived for 14 years and I could talk for 14 years. And that's how I feel when people ask me, tell me about your son. I'm like, where do I start? He was 17. And so I guess the long story short of it was his junior year of high school, he started getting into that more typical teenage experimentation with drugs. I mean, I don't want to downplay it or normalize it by any means, but our kids are exposed to those things, right? And so he got into using weed pens, so marijuana. And basically that led down a path. This was right around the COVID time. So then they're out of school, they're isolated, they have way too much time on their hands. And there was just something about COVID that really stirred things up for kids, especially kids that maybe were struggling already. And so he ended up getting pretty heavy into the marijuana use. And within a year, I would say it happened very quick too, to where one thing led to another. I think he was starting to use Xanax and some other harder drugs. And within a year, totally changed. I mean, he was not the kid that we knew for 16 years. And he ended up 2 weeks shy of his high school graduation, passing away from a fentanyl overdose. He did know that he was getting fentanyl, and it was off of Snapchat as well.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
We should talk about the Snapchat lawsuit. We can talk about that off the air. But
Oh, no,
Yes.
I would actually love to, because I don't know about it. If you want to dive
Sure.
into that, please. Because
So-
you're talking about fentanyl and Snapchat.
yeah,
I
I'm
don't
gonna
use
drag
it.
you
it's a
into
big
it.
thing.
I'm gonna drag
It's
you
a big
into
thing.
it.
Yes. Yes.
Well, so let's just start off with me stating that, in my opinion, Snapchat is the largest open-air drug market that we have when it comes to our teens. And I say in my opinion because I'm sure Snapchat would like to find a reason to sue me right now. But I think if
disclaimer,
it-
whatever
right?
we need to
So
say.
if
legally
somebody,
protected.
I think I really believe though, if somebody sat down and really researched it, you would find that there's a pretty serious link here.
The stories keep coming up.
Right, every teen death that family who's lost a teen this way, it's Snapchat
I hear the
comes
same
up.
thing too, yeah.
And so, you know, when I first started this work, again, November 2020, magical month, I guess, we met as a group of us parents who had lost our kids through a drug purchase on Snapchat. We met, and the father that was leading that, I said in that group, I said, when are we going to get loud at Snapchat? Like, I was ready to take some action. And he says, no, Amy, we need to help them. We need to get in on the inside and help them from the inside and tell them how their product's broken and help them fix it. Yeah. Okay, that seems reasonable at that stage of, and I thought he was smarter than me and that would be a good way to go. Well, kids continue to die and nothing's happening. Come spring of 2021, I'm organizing our first Snapchat rally. I get a call from this dad who says, hey, I want to talk to you. I think I'm going to get scolded because I organized this rally. I'm taking the approach he doesn't want to take. And he says, no, I'm in the room with Snapchat and I have a meeting with them, executives coming up, and I want you to be a part of this meeting. So long story short, we get this meeting. This is great, right? This is our moment to be heard. We get in there and Snap says, this is me summarizing. So sorry for your loss. We had no idea this was such a problem. And I was like, oh, this is not okay. They know this is a problem. They've been warned since 2017 that if they don't get a handle on it, it's going to explode. And here we are, the aftermath.
It's exploded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so from there, I met this woman, Gretchen Peters from the Alliance to Counter Crime Online, who says, have you thought about suing Snapchat? And I was like, well, this dad says you can't sue Snapchat because of Section 230C. And she's like, what? You can sue whoever the F you want. And I was like, my light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, I get it. You can't sue Snapchat and probably win or even be heard at court, but we can create a ruckus.
Noise.
Yes. And I'm like, I'm in 100% into that. She introduces me attorney. Long story short, we end up with the Social Media Victims Law Center ends up forming after Frances Hagen comes out as the Facebook whistleblower. And our first conference was in January. The judge deemed that we could move into discovery. Really big deal. We never thought we'd get that far. However, right now we're at a stay because SNAP has already filed their appeal for it. So we have to kind of wait that out, but we're way further than we ever thought. It's getting a lot of attention. It's a big topic of conversation. And Rolling Stone magazine is doing an investigative piece on Snapchat that's coming out in May.
Oh, wow.
So keep your eyes out for that. So it's a really big deal.
Yeah, make sure if we miss it, share it so that we
Oh,
can.
you'll hear it. You'll be,
we'll make
you'll
sure
hear
we-
about it because you're going to be in my orbit until at least the middle of May.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big deal. And we're claiming that, SNAP put these drug dealers in contact with our kids is the short of it. And we're asking for change.
Right.
We want them to change our platform to make it safe and better and for the long term. Because right now, they have the ability to do something. And they put out these little Band-Aid fixes here and there.
But it's a Band-Aid on a
Exactly.
big old tear in the freaking
Exactly.
shit. It's not gonna.
Exactly. So it's, and they just came out with an ad campaign in January stating that they're not social media. In fact, they were created to be the anti-social media is what they claim, and that their studies show that Snap makes people happier. And just because you open to a camera filter does not make you a camera company. They are a social media company.
And it's one of those things that I think it's easy to spin, or it's easy to. And there's all sorts of opinions on social media, and everything and all that other stuff. I'm sure it's very easy to just kind of say, oh, we're not this or we're not that. But the fact of the matter is that it's being used to facilitate these
It's being
deals.
used above and beyond,
Right, so we have to address that, and there has to be some responsibility that's taken to say, okay, like.
So
let's-
it's going to take legislation and litigation to move the needle on this, and so that's, I'm in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, you're much further along in this than I am, and I had heard that there was some different things with Snapchat where they were putting some more regulations down, like if kids post drugs. I don't know if this is true, maybe that it's flagged. Do you know
Well,
if that's?
I think they do have something in place. How
Okay.
effective is it? Nobody knows.
Okay. Yeah.
And nobody knows because they're allowed to self-report. But so much death and destruction, not just
Right.
drugs, but the suicide content, the sextortion,
Yeah.
all those things are, so much crime happens on that
Yeah.
platform that they have lost I feel they've lost their right to self-police. And
Right.
maybe for 5 years, maybe, I don't know how long it should last, until there's not a problem. We have a paper, best practices to end drug trafficking on social media. It's on our website. We did some research for about 9 months. We interviewed all these experts, and this paper is what we come out with. And so, really, we want a solid duty of care, meaning that, so a duty of care, if I have a brick and mortar, like right here in this building we're in, if there was crime happening in one of the rooms here and you knew about it, you're going to be held accountable for it,
Right,
right?
exactly.
And so we want that same kind of accountability
Yeah.
on this platform,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to our kids. When it comes to adults, it's a different subject matter, but these kids, that they're underdeveloped frontal lobe,
Yeah.
they're impulsive, they make rash decisions, and we're putting them in harm's way. We're not going to put them in a car and say, okay, drive this car, right?
Yeah.
Without
Yeah.
lessons first. And so we need to start taking that kind of approach with these apps.
Well, and I'm glad you point that out, the developing brain, because going back to the social media and some of the concerns, we're putting this device that is addictive in a kid's hand who has a developing brain. They don't know what to do with that and how to manage everything that's out there. And so again, I think it goes back to this piece of there needs to be more education and way more accountability from these social media platforms.
Our kids are this big, giant experiment. You probably feel this way with your son and the marijuana experience.
Absolutely.
And I want to touch back on the marijuana because I
Yeah.
think it's important to talk about, because I hear from parents often when I give a drug prevention presentation, well, my kid smokes marijuana, but at least it's just marijuana. I did it when I was in high school and I turned out okay. And it's like, put on the brakes, because you know what? You're right. It was okay when you were in high school. you were getting a 2 to 4% THC,
Yep.
the psychoactive substance, but our kids are getting a 60 to 80%, and it is killing their frontal lobe. And you know, Colorado especially, this time last year, they were overrun with teens in their emergency rooms
That's
because
insane.
of marijuana-induced issues.
Yes.
That
Are
is
you? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're
Yeah.
fine. That's insane.
It is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How much higher that is. We're talking
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
10, 20 times
Yeah.
Yeah.
as much. I mean, they're not sitting there with a doobie this big.
Mhm. And
You
just
know?
eating a bag of Doritos, it is making them
It's-
depressed. They're disengaging from things that they love to do. And so I challenge teens when I give my drug prevention presentations. I'll talk like, okay, I'm not asking you to stop. Okay, you're doing whatever you're doing. But I'm going to ask you to kind of look at your life before marijuana and look at it right now. Are you disengaged with the things that you love? Are you mean to your little brothers and sisters who you used to enjoy spending time with? Are you constantly isolating? Are you feeling depressed and you don't know why? So take that, put the marijuana away for 24 hours, and then see how you're feeling. Push it 2 days, push it 3 days. If at any time in there you're feeling that compulsion for marijuana, whatever form you take it in, that is what addiction feels like. And that is a great indicator of it. It's time for help, and there's lots of ways to help you.
So I think you bring up something so important, the marijuana, right? And so I always say, in our story, we lost our son to marijuana first. I always say that. The marijuana is really where we lost him. The fentanyl is what was permanent. And so I think touching on that is just as important as acknowledging this deadly drug who is, that's taking lives. But I got involved with, are you familiar with Johnny's Ambassadors in
Yes,
Colorado?
yes.
Okay, so I attended the Youth Marijuana Prevention Conference last summer with them, and it was exactly, that's where I learned. But again, I'm learning these things, but not our community is very uneducated on this, right? And so some of us are learning these things, but the community as a whole and parents as a whole, they only know what they know. And there's a lot of lack of awareness, I think, in education when it comes to the marijuana these days and the potency. And so, yeah.
So I will tell you
Yeah.
some good news. I think.
Yes.
In the state of Arizona, where we are right now, the Substance Abuse Coalition Leaders of Arizona has amazing education around marijuana and vaping and those things for parents and for youth. So that is something we have access to here in Arizona. Arizona is one of the few states in the last year that has seen a decrease in drug-related deaths because of the education awareness that happens in our state.
That's how we do it. That's how we
Yeah,
fix it.
so good to
I'm
hear.
so proud of our state when it comes to that. But personally, I feel one of the biggest things we're up against with these parents that don't know these days is stigma. They hear fentanyl overdose on the news. They hear marijuana. Oh, we don't have a drug problem in my house. That messaging means nothing to me. They turn the channel. They tune it out. Whatever it is.
Can't
So
do that.
how do we get people to listen to that when the commercial comes on the radio? Because there's a lot of talknowaz.org puts out a lot of that's part of the Substance Abuse Coalition Leaders. Great marketing. There's billboards all throughout the city. How do you get people to take note or notice that when they don't think there's ever going to be a problem in their house?
Yeah.
I think we need to meet them where they're at with that thought process. Like, I think what happens is it's so innate in us as parents to think, not my kid, right? Like, that's hard to believe that would ever happen to your kid.
Well, it's scary
Even-
to
yeah,
be
sure,
able to
it's
admit
fear, yeah.
that there's a monster under the bed. You know.
And so we assume that, first and foremost, and then I think beyond that, again, there's this almost like you're going to be immune to like this happening to your family. And I always say, and I've said this, in news stories, that not a single person's immune.
No.
Here I am, literally working in this field, and I was affected. And when my kid was struggling, so bad, I didn't even know how to help him. And here I am helping other families with the same sorts of things. And so nobody's immune. And I think we have to acknowledge parents' fear around that and belief that like, no, not my kid, it's gonna be okay. And also the dialectics piece, right? Help parents understand that there's a different side to this.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not wrong for thinking what they think. I felt those same things as a parent, right? But the reality is that this can happen to anybody.
Absolutely. And so I try to get parents to think like, okay,
Right.
maybe it's not your kid, but it might be their best friend.
Or the
Right.
neighbor,
Exactly. Like we got to think outside of our four walls.
Yes. Yes.
No, it takes
Yeah.
it really takes a village, right? And we've said that for I don't know how many years,
Right.
but
True.
like with the introduction of this new medium to connect, we have to realize that we're going to need some education in order to grow with this.
Absolutely.
You know,
I think we're
otherwise
yeah.
we're dealing with these things and it's not going to go anywhere but down.
And we have to stop being so hard on each other. So,
Yeah.
you know,
see, that one's hard sometimes.
it is. I mean, you probably have experiences where you do something on the news and you get the hate mail. It tells you what a horrible parent
Why
you are.
did you do this? And
It's like, well, they just have no idea what it was like inside your home and the things that you did do, and you love your child.
Why didn't you listen, or why didn't you have a conversation or intervention, or why didn't you take the phone away? Why didn't you whatever?
I feel like we had all those guardrails in place, and yet here we are. Like, that is the hardest thing to try to square up in my mind.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, why am I here? Like, death was not on our radar.
And I can tell you from an addiction standpoint, and my experience in everything, it was all behavioral, which I'm very thankful that I would never have experimented with anything like that. But when you have that addiction, that impulse, your brain is constantly going around, how do I get around the safeguards? Because safeguards are great, but you can hop a guardrail.
Yeah.
You can go around it. You can, all of these different things, like find out the password or use a friend's phone or whatever it might be.
And when you've got these drug dealers willing to drive right up to your house these days
And deliver it.
Yeah. So I mean, there's no going to dark, scary places anymore. You don't have to leave the house. It's just right there.
Yeah.
So when we kind of pull back, and I feel like everything we're talking about, we're at where we're at because back in the day, pre-social media, and it's not even just social media that's caused this, but the drugs were different, right? So that again, like when we were growing up, the potency of marijuana was different. We didn't have the lethal, fentanyl drug.
It's like the crazy
and
stuff
so
was in a
that
back
hasn't
alley.
changed. Like people have struggled with drug use and addiction and teenage experimentation with drugs for all of time. You know what I mean?
Right.
But what has changed is the potency of drugs. Now we have lethality in the drugs that are out there. And then the access, and that's where the social media piece comes in. It was much harder for us to access those things, or you had to go around more
Hide
hoops,
a gas station
Yeah.
through this, and you had to know a guy that knows this guy.
There was some effort to it.
Yes, yeah, and with, like you said, that they can deliver it, and just a quick message and have it delivered. I mean, that is. And then when we talk about the marijuana with the weed pens that they're using, these are little devices that can fit in their pockets.
And they look like magic markers. They're disguised as so many different things. So you might think you've searched your kid's room or their backpack or whatever, and it's right in front of you and you just don't even know.
Yeah.
You're not like, take apart every single one of your pens.
Right.
You might not think.
And so kids can do it anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think when we're looking at what is the solution to this, right?
Yeah.
It's first acknowledging why we are where we are.
Yeah.
And this social media piece is such a big driver in the way that these kids are accessing this stuff. And so as parents, again, becoming educated on that and starting, we got to put safeguards in place, and we got to hold social media companies accountable.
We absolutely do. To keep coming at them.
Beautiful.
Having these conversations, like we think about getting loud as going out and doing something, but it can be as simple as sharing the information and having that conversation. Hey, did you know that this is a thing? And then
The education piece.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
and on
opening
this
up.
episode, guys, if you've had an experience with the Snapchat and dealing, share in the comments. If you have articles that you guys know, we'll obviously share yours, but share those in the comments so that we can all be seeing what that is, because we need to make as big a noise as we can.
Absolutely, and it's going to take all of us. It's going to take a nice big movement of something to happen.
100%. Oh my gosh, and we are definitely going to have to have you on again, because I know that even in just the Parent Connection Academy, there's all these different things that we were just talking about that we could have episodes on. So we'll definitely have to have you back. But oh my gosh, thank you so much for being on, and we have just loved having you.
We barely
scratched the
Barely.
surface.
We have way more
I
that needs
know.
to be addressed with this. Yes, I think we need part 2.
Yes, no,
Yeah,
let's
no,
definitely
seriously.
do that. And if you guys want to see part 2, if you have specific questions that we can address the next time that we have you
for
on,
sure.
then please put those in the comments. Share this episode, and remember, we make a change together, right? Bridges are built from 2 sides, right? I say that all the time. It's kind of my catchphrase for the Bridging Divides podcast. We have to both sides need to be working on this together, and we can all do this. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we can do this together. We love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.